The theater was quiet in a way that felt soft, not empty. The lights were dim, and the air carried the faint smell of dust, wood, and old curtains. It was early morning, long before the audience would arrive. The stage was empty except for a single grand piano placed at the center. Its black surface reflected the ceiling lights like still water. At the far side of the stage, a man pushed a cleaning cart slowly across the floor. His movements were careful and steady, as if he did not want to disturb the silence. His name was Daniel Reyes. He was from the Philippines, and for the past 12 years, he had worked as a janitor in different buildings across the United States. Offices, schools, theaters like this one, places where people came to shine, while he stayed in the background. Daniel stopped near the piano. He rested his hands on the handle of his cart and looked at the instrument. He always did this when he worked in theaters. The piano pulled his eyes the way the moon pulls the tide. He did not touch it. He never did. He just stood there and breathed, letting the quiet wrap around him. Music had been part of Daniel's life for as long as he could remember. In the Philippines, his mother used to sing while cooking rice over a small stove. His father hummed old love songs while fixing broken chairs. There was an old piano in their church, missing a few keys and always slightly out of tune. Daniel was the boy who stayed after everyone left, pressing the keys gently, learning by listening, by feeling. But life did not move gently. His father became sick. Medical bills grew. Daniel left school and took work wherever he could find it. When his father passed away, Daniel became the man of the family overnight. Dreams were folded carefully and placed on a high shelf. Survival came first. Years later, he came to America with hope and fear packed into one small suitcase. He worked long nights cleaning floors and bathrooms. During breaks, he watched videos of piano performances on his phone. Sometimes he practiced on imaginary keys, tapping his fingers against his knees. Music stayed with him, quiet but alive. On this morning, Daniel finished his work as the sun began to rise. He wiped the last row of seats and checked the floor once more. Before leaving, he turned back to the stage. The piano waited, silent and patient. He smiled softly, then pushed his cart away. Later that day, the theater filled with noise. Cameramen adjusted lights. Crew members spoke into headsets. Judges took their seats behind the long table. The audience buzzed with excitement, their voices blending into one restless sound. This was America's Got Talent, a place where dreams stepped into the light. Backstage, Daniel stood in line with the other contestants. He wore a simple button-down shirt and clean shoes. His hands trembled slightly, so he pressed them together. Around him were dancers stretching, singers warming their voices, magicians checking their props. Everyone looked like they belonged. Daniel felt small. A producer approached him with a clipboard. "What do you do for work?" she asked kindly. "I am a janitor," Daniel said. Her eyebrows lifted for a moment, then she smiled. "And what will you be doing today?" "Playing the piano," he replied. She nodded, but Daniel saw the surprise in her eyes. He had seen that look many times before. It never hurt as much as it used to, but it still landed quietly in his chest. When his name was called, Daniel walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than he expected. He could not see the audience clearly, only shadows and movement. He stopped at the center and took a breath. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly. "Hello," he said. "What's your name?" "Daniel Reyes," Daniel answered. "And where are you from, Daniel?" Simon asked. "I am from the Philippines," Daniel said. His voice was calm, though his heart raced. Simon nodded. "And what do you do, Daniel?" "I work as a janitor," he said again, this time louder, clearer. There was a small ripple through the audience. Not laughter, just surprise. Simon paused. "Okay, and what will you be doing for us today?" Daniel turned toward the piano. "I will play the piano," he said. He walked to the bench and sat down. For a moment, he rested his hands in his lap. He closed his eyes. The noise of the room faded. He was no longer on a stage. He was back in the small church, the cracked wooden floor under his feet. He was back in his mother's kitchen, hearing her voice rise and fall. He was back in every quiet night where music was the only place he felt fully himself. Daniel placed his hands on the keys. The first notes were soft, almost shy. A simple melody, slow and careful. The sound filled the theater like a gentle breath. People leaned forward without realizing it. The room grew still. As Daniel played, the music deepened. It carried sadness, but also warmth. Each note felt intentional, like a word chosen with care. His fingers moved smoothly, confidently. This was not just skill. This was memory. This was life. The melody swelled, then softened again. It told a story without words. Of long nights. Of quiet hope. Of someone cleaning floors while holding a dream close to his heart. Simon Cowell sat very still. His usual sharp expression faded. His eyes followed Daniel's hands, then drifted upward, unfocused. Something in the music had reached him, something personal and raw. The audience remained silent. No one coughed. No one whispered. Time slowed. Halfway through the performance, the music changed. A gentle twist entered the melody. It lifted, not loudly, but with purpose. The sadness did not disappear, but it transformed. It became strength. It became resilience. Daniel's shoulders relaxed. He was no longer nervous. He was home. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence. It lasted longer than expected, like the world needed time to breathe again. Then the audience rose to their feet. Applause filled the theater, loud and full. Some people wiped their eyes. Others simply clapped, their faces open and moved. Daniel stood slowly. He bowed his head slightly, overwhelmed. Simon Cowell did not clap right away. He looked down, then up. His eyes were wet. He took a breath and leaned toward his microphone. "Daniel," he said, his voice quieter than usual, "that was beautiful." Daniel nodded, unable to speak. "I've heard a lot of piano players in my life," Simon continued. "But what you just did was not about showing off. It was honest. It was real. And it moved me." Simon paused. He swallowed hard. "I think sometimes we forget how much talent is hidden in everyday people," he said. "People who work hard, who clean up after others, who keep the world running quietly." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "And you," Simon said, pointing gently, "you remind us why this show exists." Simon stood up. The audience gasped. He reached for the golden buzzer. When he pressed it, gold confetti exploded from above, raining down like sunlight. The crowd screamed. The judges stood. Music played. The moment was loud and bright and unreal. Daniel covered his mouth with his hands. Tears streamed down his face. He laughed and cried at the same time, shaking his head as if to say this could not be happening. Simon walked onto the stage and hugged him. "Thank you," Simon said quietly. "Thank you for sharing that with us." After the show, Daniel sat alone backstage, holding a small bottle of water. The noise outside felt distant now. His hands were still trembling, but in a different way. Not fear. Relief. He thought of his mother. Of his father. Of every floor he had cleaned while humming melodies to himself. He thought of the piano waiting patiently all those years. This was not the end of his story. He knew that. There would still be hard days. There would still be work to do. But something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, Daniel allowed himself to believe that the dream he had placed on a high shelf could be taken down. Weeks later, when he returned to work, he pushed his cleaning cart through another quiet theater. But this time, when he passed the piano, he stopped and smiled. The keys were no longer just something to look at from a distance. They were part of his future. And in that quiet moment, with the stage empty and the lights low, Daniel placed one hand on the piano lid, not to play, but to thank it.